You're here today because you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or business leader who knows that hiring the right people, and especially finding the right second in command, is one of the most critical decisions you'll ever make. It's easy to find people that look good on paper, but finding somebody who not only shares your values, but also operationalizes your vision while making your company run like a well-oiled machine, that's a whole different ballgame. Enter today's guest, Cameron Herold. Cameron is best known as the CEO Whisperer. He's the behind-the-scenes force who helped scale 100 Got Junk from 2 million to 106 million in just 6 years. He's the founder of the COO Alliance, the world's leading network in second-in-command executives, and the host of the Second in Command podcast. He's also the author of The Second in Command, Vivid Vision, Double Double, and other leadership staples, books that are basically required reading for any growth-minded founder. Today, we're diving deep into the real value of world-class COOs, what most leaders get wrong when hiring their number two, and how to build culture that doesn't just survive growth, but thrives it. This conversation is for visionaries who's ready to stop wearing every hat and finally build a leadership team that brings their business to life. Imagine a company your vision is fully aligned with execution, where your COO anticipates your needs before you even voice them, where your culture flourishes, your team is deeply engaged, and your growth feels intentional, not chaotic. That's the power of a perfectly aligned first and second in command. Let's dive in. Cameron, welcome to the Build on Purpose podcast.
Hey, Max, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Let's just jump in. What does a great COO look like in today's scaling business?
Wow, great question. A great COO looks like the match, the yin and yang to their CEO. So it's a hard answer because it's different for every single company. Even in the tenure when I'm very well known for being the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I was a fantastic CEO or COO for that company in the stage of growth that it was in to match the CEO of that organization and kind of what needed to be done at that time. But I would have been a horrible COO for you. I didn't necessarily match you or your behavioral traits or the size of the organization you're running or the industry that you're in. So just that I was a good COO isn't what you're looking for. It's the plug and play into the organization, the leadership team. So there's a lot there to describe what you're asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I love about your book, Second in Command. And I think most people that read it that I ended up talking to is how you describe, I think you describe 8 different archetypes or different types of COOs.
Yeah, I described 7 different archetypes of COOs and then also some different styles that they have to play. But let me explain this a little bit further. Let's say you're the head of marketing for, a pet care company. You could be the head of marketing for almost any pet care company. You could probably also be the head of marketing for any business to consumer or packaged goods company because you're marketing a product to consumers online, digital, and you're running marketing. And you could be the head of finance for any of those companies. You could probably be the head of IT. The head of operations, the COO, has to match the CEO very differently. So you're looking for some different things when you're looking for that second in command of an organization than just the functional head of a business area.
100%. When should a founder or CEO know it's time to hire a COO?
One of the things you tend to bump into is you don't have enough time to grow your people. You don't have enough time to work on the areas of the business that fill you with energy or that you're really, really good at, or you're just missing out on opportunities of things that you could be doing that you're having to bump down the road, 1 month or 3 months. Those would be some good early signs that you could bring in a second in command in the organization. Another one is just you have so many opportunities sitting there that if you had somebody doing this, your business would scale faster, right? So you're kind of delaying the growth of your organization because you're not hiring that person to come in and take some stuff off your plate. At the end of the day, especially in entrepreneurial organizations, entrepreneurs only start a company for one of 3 reasons. They start a company to kind of put a flag in the ground or a stake in the ground to say they accomplished something, or they start a company to give them money, or they start a company to give them free time. Well, once you've accomplished it, you got the business up and running, and you got enough money coming in, you can kind of start to buy yourself a better life. You can put that second in command in place to free up your time, free up your energy, allow you to work on just the areas of business that you're really, really good at and you love to do, and give you the ability to go and have a better life and do the stuff that you really want to do outside of the business day to day. So that's another reason to hire a second in command.
Yeah, it reminds me of Joe Polish saying how Dan Sullivan says, if you have enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. I've actually never heard Dan actually say that. I've only heard Joe say that like 10 times.
Yeah.
But I've heard that Dan said it. But I did, for the first time, I read Who Not How
Yeah, by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy.
Yeah, and he talks about the four, I think, entrepreneurial levers or something. And he talks about time. He talks about money. He talks about, and then purpose is one of them, and then relationships. So if you have enough time, and this is almost the same model you just described in that answer. So you first of all figure out how to, leverage your time, which then ends up getting you more money, which then ends up letting you determine who you have relationships and who you spend your time with. And then typically, and the reason why I bring this up is I think most people try to search for their purpose first. And some people are lucky enough to find it. But I think the reality is most people, they figure it out over time, and the way they sustain kind of the flywheel is they figure out their purpose and why they're doing that. And then they just start doubling down on time, relationships, and money. Is that kind of how you see it, or is there anything missing in that?
Similar, yeah. So I love Dan Sullivan's work. I was a part of the Strategic Coach program for years, starting back in 2002. He talks about his unique ability. And the idea for an entrepreneur or a CEO is to find the 2 or 3 things that you're really, really good at, that you love to do, that frankly you would probably do for free, except you have to pay bills once in a while. So if you can delegate everything except genius and allows you to just work on the stuff that you're really good at and you love to do, you start bringing all of that good positive energy into your organization, and that momentum creates momentum. That positive energy throws off more positive energy inside of the organization. But if you're an entrepreneur or a CEO and you're stuck in the day-to-day, you're stuck working on stuff that drains you, you're stuck working on stuff that you suck at or you don't like to do, you're starting to bring some of that negative energy into the organization. And the reality is that work needs to get done, but maybe not by someone like you. And this really hit me years ago. About 20 years ago, I was working on a memo that I needed to send out to all of our hundreds of franchisees. And it was this important document that I needed to send out. And I was spending day after day going through this stuff. And the cycle time and the energy, and it was draining me. And I wasn't good at it. Well, this was prior to ChatGPT, clearly, because it was 20 years ago. But we had a woman on our team who was a copywriter. And I went over to Catherine and I said, hey, if I just send you a voice note, would you be able to take that voice note and turn it into a really good memo that we could send to our franchisees? And she goes, oh my God, I'd love to. I'm like, what do you mean you'd love to? And she goes, I love writing memos like that. I love to put business stuff. I'd love to be able to take your voice and make it come true to shape the organization. I'm like, wow, like you actually like to do the stuff that I suck at and I hate doing. So that was an example of, if I can get stuff off my plate that drains me of energy and it frees me up to do the stuff that I'm really good at and I love to do, then the business is going to scale. Very similar to this COO role. And often entrepreneurs and CEOs have people that they're barely spending time with. So you're not growing your people, you're not growing your direct reports, you're not removing their obstacles, you're not aligning them, you're not inspiring them. So at best, you're kind of all just drones marching through, and that's why your company isn't scaling.
Yeah, what would you say are the biggest mistakes CEOs make when hiring or integrating their second in command?
One of the big ones is just saying, oh, you've been a COO before, you should be mine, right? Another one is just coming in and saying, well, I'm hiring you as a COO and now I'm going to tell you what to do. Well, that means you're really hiring more of a director. So be very careful with the title that you put in place for the person before you plug them into your organization. An example is that the title should be tied to the amount of strategic insight the person brings to the company, the amount of P&L responsibility that you're willing to give them, the amount of autonomy that they can have so they can just show up and do their job. They don't need you to manage them or show them what to do. And sometimes the amount of people and partners and suppliers that they can bring to the company for you because they have these people they've worked with before. Based on all of that stuff, that's the title that you're giving. So I've seen companies in the past hire a COO and then they treat them like a director, or they hire a director level person and they expect them to come in with P&L responsibility and strategic insight. They just don't have the skill set to do that.
Yeah, we do see a lot of title inflation. Like when I get to talk to companies and I start talking to their teams, sometimes they've been careless about giving away C-level titles early, and then they have to go through the painful realization that none of their C-level folks are really C-level. Yeah,
do you know where that started? Title inflation started in the mid 90s to late 90s when the banks started to give away VP titles to their people as a sales tool. So the people that were in kind of investment banking got vice president titles. Meanwhile, they were 8 layers below the CEO, right? So then when the internet hit and people got email addresses, 95, 96, 97, all of a sudden salespeople and marketing people had a way to put their business card, their digital business card, in front of prospects, so we gave away bigger titles. A vice president title will get that person in the door. A C-level title will get that person in the door. So all of a sudden, when the rise of the first .com era happened, everyone were given these marketing titles that they could use on their website and with their emails. That's where title inflation started. And then when the .com crash happened in 2000, 2001, when the NASDAQ fell by 78%, employees used to take equity in lieu of compensation. So they'd take equity stock instead of getting paid. Then all of a sudden they wanted to get paid, and they wanted their stock, and they wanted their big fancy title. So that's where title inflation started. And nowadays we've got a 10-person company with a chief marketing officer, a chief financial officer, a chief operating officer. It's like, no, you have a marketing manager and a finance manager and a controller. Like, you don't have any C-level people working with you at all. Why are you giving away these big titles?
Yeah. I loved how you kind of described the fact that they have, strategic vision. They have kind of the network and vendors and stuff that a C-level person would have, because what actually we see more often now than the opposite is somebody that comes in and they want to hire a director or a manager, and when they start telling us, somebody on the team, what they want the person to do, we kind of have to say, like, can you be open to like at least looking at some VP level folks? And it depends on what size the company that they're working at. Currently, all these candidates, it's like, we might be looking for a VP, but there's probably a lot of directors at bigger companies that would fit that role. So title inflation is a challenge, and I think most people realize it now. I think most people learn their lesson, but that is interesting, the history. I would agree with every bit of the history. I am old enough to remember all the stuff you described in the 90s, so that's good. So I was just talking about with a client that we were kind of talking about onboarding COO, and we were talking about how often the two should meet and what those meetings should look like. Is there any advice that you have on how often COO and a CEO should meet and kind of what those meetings should look like? You and I have talked about this before, but I think it'd be awesome for you to share it with the
there's two styles of meetings that need to happen very frequently between the COO and CEO. The first one is more of the operational sync meeting, where you're getting and staying on the same page, where the CEO and COO, and ideally it's weekly, it's usually a 1-hour meeting every single week to review the metrics, to review the dashboard, to go through the project plan, to stay in sync with where the company's going strategically and how we're actually making that come true, to talk about talent, to talk about the people in the organization that we might be struggling with, to make sure that we get a good lens on how all the different business areas are working. That's something that needs to happen on a weekly basis. The second meeting that needs to happen is kind of the date night. And it's just time away from the business, time away from the rest of the team, where the CEO and the COO just get to stay in sync and do stuff together and hang out together. And sometimes that's going to the gym or going for a run or going for a beer, going to grab coffee, but it's just time away where we can actually just connect and get to know each other and like each other. There's a little bit of this whole, they're the business spouse, right? So to stay in sync, you have to know, like, and trust each other, which means you have to put that system in place and time in place to stay in love with that other person.
I love how you listed out the different modalities of like a run, a jog, a workout, a beer, and drinking. I don't know if it's just me, but I know you recently went through the same thing. I won't say that I don't drink anymore, because that's kind of been like put back on me. They're like, I heard you don't drink anymore. I'm like, no, I just drink what I want to. But it's pretty much I don't really drink anymore. But what I'm noticing is like I don't know many high functioning executives that drink a lot anymore. I mean, do you?
Well, here's what's really funny. So behind me on the counter is a bottle of wine. It's the first bottle of wine I've purchased in over 2 years. And I bought it because I'm making beef bourguignon tonight for dinner. So it literally is the base of the sauce that the beef is cooked in. I haven't had a drink in over 2 years. My wife hasn't had a drink in over 5 years. We've just quit drinking. So it was really weird yesterday going into this wine store in Australia and buying a bottle of wine to make a dish with. It felt strange walking out with a bottle of wine in my hand. So no, I quit drinking. It just doesn't serve me.
Yeah, I don't think it serves a lot of people. I think that's actually a trend with younger folks too, that I like, where I think they're just, especially in Australia where you're currently at, there's a company that we're working with and they're building these gyms. You'd have to look in your area. I don't think they have one in Brisbane. St. Haven is the company. Tim Gurner is the guy in Australia, and they build, he does like multifamily like housing and communities. And they basically are building these gyms where people pay about up to $500 a week. Hopefully I'm not disclosing a pricing model that I'm not supposed to, but it's because he talks about, he's super passionate about this. I love their model. And I think a lot of this is happening in the US too. It's just happening there a little bit faster. But he talks about how younger people, because most of their ideal clients are under 40 and affluent, but most people, they want to work out and spend a lot of time. They have bars in these gyms, but I think it's not like it used to be where you go to a nightclub and spend all night, getting wasted. You actually work out and create a lifestyle with people with like a nice bar inside of a gym. I mean, I think it's an interesting model that's happening. So I'm kind of going through the same thing. I don't really drink. I do want to drink though. The thing I'm in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and we do enjoy drinking socially in the summer. Like that's my thing, is like I want to drink. But I can't figure out what I want to drink because it all makes me feel like shit. So I often go through this conversation with my wife's like, what should I drink? Get me something to drink. And there's nothing I can get that she likes because there's just not a ROI in it for us.
Well, I think what's happening inside of companies now is companies are recognizing that having drinks after work, which was kind of the typical 80s, 90s, 2000s thing to do, doesn't scale anymore. Plus, it opens you up to legal liability where, people just drink and go sideways and do stuff they're embarrassed about. And, you can't have that in your work environment, so now what people are doing is they're doing activities that are around sport. They're doing activities that are around fun. They're putting together corporate leagues. There's a group called Jam Sports that has leagues in dozens of cities around North America, and they have companies that will put in, volleyball leagues, beach volleyball leagues, European handball leagues, soccer teams. So they're doing activities together. They're starting run clubs, they're starting hiking clubs, they're doing yoga clubs, they're playing guitar clubs. And I think companies are realizing that it's about getting your employees together after work to do stuff that is social, but it doesn't necessarily involve alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a ton of sense. So kind of back to the alignment between a COO and CEO. What happens when there's misalignment? Like, how do you course correct?
Well, it's because you have the frequency of those meetings that you can get back on the same page, right? It is about that same page meeting. So the COO's job is to make the CEO look good and to make the CEO's vision come true. The CEO's job is to make the COO look good internally and to make sure that the COO has the plans in place to make the vision come true. So it's just staying in sync, right? It's making sure that you are communicating, you are talking about the right stuff. Often in entrepreneurial organizations, the entrepreneurs have all these ideas and they dump them on people's plates and they're kind of always starting and going in random directions. The COO's job is to play cleanup to that, right? To be the brakes to the gas or to be the leash to the dragon, but not choke the dragon, not be the parking brake. So the COO's job is to make sure they take all those random ideas, put them into a project plan and build them in the right order. So it is about staying in sync, staying on the same page, staying on the same plan, making sure that each person has their own swim lanes, making sure that even at the CEO level, there's clarity around roles and responsibilities and metrics. Right? What are the core projects the CEO is supposed to be working on? In the absence of a CEO having a core set of projects and metrics that they're responsible for, then of course they're going to get distracted and they're going to focus on everything else.
Yeah. What role should the COO play in protecting the culture?
Should the COO?
Yeah, COO.
Well, there's a couple things. One is I think you need to have a head of people or some kind of a people committee that crosses all different functional areas. So you just have a lens for how are our decisions as a company impacting people? What are the needs of people and how do we align them? And then also just making sure that people inside of the organization really understand that work-life balance doesn't mean working 20 hours a week. Work-life balance still means putting in a good hard day's work for a fair day's pay, right? I think often we have this Gen Z mindset now that they don't want to work 40 or 50 hours a week. Well, they should probably go work for a different company. The COO's job is to make sure that you have the right people in the right seats working on the right stuff, all aligned with that vivid vision, and that we care about the people that are showing up every day. But you can't let the tail wag the dog. And I think often we're seeing this kind of new cohort of Gen Z really kind of take the company off in the wrong direction. The CEO's job is to bring us back into some kind of equilibrium. It's really why a lot of companies are now bringing employees back to the office, because we're just recognizing that the whole work from home doesn't necessarily deliver the results that we were expecting that it was going to.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when I talk to leaders, and most people aren't built to work from home. Like they need somebody to kind of guide them and direct them in some way. Some people are, but not everybody. And I think people think that everybody, and the people that aren't set up necessarily to be, self-guided and working. They're not going to tell you either because they like the flexibility. So you really got to figure that piece out. And by the way, if you guys are listening to this, Cameron Herold's book, Second in Command, talks about a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, as well as he's got other books as well, Vivid Vision, Double Double. He also has a course, Invest in Your Leaders. So all the stuff that I'm talking about, I'm kind of teasing out of it, but you can actually go, buy his course, read his book, join the COO Alliance, go look up the COO Alliance, find out, what it's about. It's kind of like YPO for COOs, really good peer group, and they do some pretty cool stuff. So as we're talking about this, just know that that's where the base of this is coming from, and there's a lot that you can get from from all of his books and courses and the COO Alliance. How do you ensure that your leadership team is living up to the company's core values? I'm asking you very basic questions because I know you have such great answers.
No, it's a really good question. So part is making sure that you recruit and hire people who already live those core values, right? That they're not showing up and you're teaching them a core value and hoping that they live by it. So making core values part of your interviewing and recruiting process to make sure that you're only bringing people in who already live those core values. If they live those core values and they're the right culture fit, then you're going to make sure that they have the skills to do the job that you're needing. So that's the starting point, is bring people in who already live those core values. Number two is make sure that they're not just up on the wall, right? That these are core values that you live by, which means that you should have a maximum of 4 or 5 core values. They should be easy to understand, and they should be short, clear phrases that are easy for people to understand, that don't need any explanation. The only time I've ever let anyone have a single word as a core value was a company out of Florida that I was coaching called Blue Grace Logistics, another YPOer, and their 5th core value was simplify. I'm like, ooh, I like that. That's good, right? But integrity, what the heck does that mean? So a good example of some companies' core values are deliver what you promise, respect the individual, pride in all you do, find a better way, simplify. Like, those are easy to understand core values that you can hire people who already live them. You can reinforce them on a day-to-day basis. And it's important, in fact, it's integral that the CEO lives the core values too. If the CEO is showing up late for a meeting, then you're not delivering what you promise, you don't respect the individual, you don't have pride in what you do, so then you just mean the core values don't matter. So it's that old grandmotherism, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Well, the CEO has to live the core values too, and then the team has to celebrate and thank each other for living the core values and for demonstrating the core values. That's how they really stick inside the organization.
Yeah, I think the final piece that isn't as positive is, I think at the end of the day, you have to terminate people for core value violations as well.
Yeah.
Hold your ground.
You have to be willing to fire people who break the core values. You can't just have them up on the wall. If you're not willing to fire them, they're not a core value.
Yeah, so a lot of people listening to this are growing businesses, and when it comes to core values, they may be thinking, like, how do you scale without losing what made your company special in the first place? And I don't think it should be a problem for everybody, but I think I know people have asked me this question a lot, and I want to hear how you answer it.
So if you take a company like, Google, right? When they started the company, it was about this mission to democratize the world's information, to organize and democratize, so to give everyone access to all the information. That was their core purpose. It's still their core purpose today. Their core values are consistent today. Hiring these insanely smart people that want to do that is still what they do today. Giving people, 20% of their work week, which is basically one day a week, to just work on crazy cool stuff that inspires them, is still part of their ethos today. So sticking to that kind of core essence is what allows you to scale. Because you're not going to get to go and talk to the entrepreneur when you're a 100,000 or a 500,000 person company. Look, when we were starting 1-800-GOT-JUNK and I was employee number 14, the franchisees had a lot more access to Brian than they did when I left the company 6 years later, and we had 330 franchisees who were only able to access Brian through the Franchise Advisory Council. But the core values were consistent, our BHAG was consistent, our Vivid Vision was consistent. So it's just staying consistent with that core is what allows your culture to scale.
Yeah, speaking of AI, what is your take on where we're headed with AI and how leaders should be embracing it, not embracing it? Like, what is your take when you think about AI? I know you're, kind of always ahead of the curve a bit.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
So very recently I've flipped on something. For a long time I was saying, for probably the better part of 2 years, I've been saying that AI will not replace you. A person using AI will replace you. That's partially true. Where I'm now flipped on that is if you're a driver of a vehicle, like a shuttle driver, a limo driver, whatever, you're out of job. Like AI is replacing you. There's not going to be a driver using AI. Waymo is coming and there ain't anybody in it. So there's a lot of jobs that are just going to be completely eliminated. And the people that do those jobs are going to have to find another job that they can work in. I think that we're going to see that the average intellect of people that are employable is going to continue to go up. That there's going to be a base entry level of people that are just not going to be employable. I don't know what the answer is for those people right now because 14% of the workforce in Korea right now is robots. Like factory work and farm work and labor work is going to be robots in the next 10 years. So I'm not entirely sure other than to say if you want to stay in a career and employed, you have to be embracing AI, you have to be learning AI, you have to be able to adapt, you have to be malleable, you have to live core values, you have to give a shit. I think the game is now swung back in the favor of not necessarily the employer, but employees have to care more than they've ever cared before, or they'll get replaced by somebody who's using AI. But yeah, I think it is a bit of an adapt or die kind of situation, sadly.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the things that I was, I think, listening to on a podcast or something, as everybody knows, Elon Musk and Tesla are, their Model Ys, they're going to be self-driving and you're going to be able to opt to use your car for transportation. And what I've read is right now it costs $2 to $4 per mile, depending on the city you're in across the world. And they are talking about it being 25%, 25 to 50% per mile. So it's almost going to be such little money that it won't even make sense to own a car. So, if I've even kind of looked at that from an investor standpoint. If they make it that easy to move around or that inexpensive to move around, that means that it's probably going to get a little crowded. It'll get more efficient because they'll have more cars, and I think AI is going to figure out how to move people faster. But eventually they're going to have to get off the ground and be flying people is what my prediction would be.
That's already being tested. In Abu Dhabi this quarter, they're testing the electric autonomous helicopters to actually move people from point to point. That's happening in Abu Dhabi starting this month.
Wow, it's crazy. It's amazing. Yeah, I also read Amazon, they're testing their drone deliveries like near their centers. Like they're already dropping stuff off 5 pounds or less. They're just, you pay $10 and you get to watch a drone come drop it off. I mean, I'd pay $10 to watch that just in itself. But you're right. It is wild. I think your valuation, is right. I do think it's scary because if you think about exactly the example you used, which is driving, so we know that's all going to be wiped out, but you got to think about all of the ancillary stuff attached to driving, which is like insurance companies and like all the infrastructure. I mean, all that.
Parking lots, auto body shops, mechanic shops, car insurance, all those jobs are wiped out.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. But I do think people are going to have to adapt. I think a lot of people are adapting. I think at Yscouts, I have an AI guy that trains us on how to make, ESAs, and, we share an AI account and you can share it with everybody. So when you build something, everybody can use it. I mean, I think that feels like kind of the right way to go about it.
Yeah, we have a part of the COO Alliance. We have an AI expert every single month come online via Zoom and train all of our COO Alliance members on one new area of AI that they can actually bring into their organizations just to expose us to stuff that is a little bit out of the box. And then what I'm trying to do is get the CEO and the COO to get in sync after every one of those AI innovation calls to make sure that we bring that information deep into the organization. But these are all tools and technologies that we need to be excited about and adapting. And I'm trying to get my COO Alliance members to do like a 5-minute book report. And on Monday, to get the leadership team to just share one thing that they've used AI for this week with everybody else on the team, just to know what this stuff can even do.
Yeah, I think that's a great move. Talk about vivid vision. So AI is not going to replace like the vision that, CEOs create in their mind. Talk about, obviously I've read the book, I've created visions, I've talked to you about it, but talk about the concept in general and kind of the key points of it.
So a vivid vision is a 4 or 5 page description of what your company looks like, acts like, and feels like 3 years in the future. So it's the CEO writing down every aspect of their company as if they were standing in the future walking around their business. It's talking about how the customers are interacting with your company. It's talking about how your employees are engaging with each other. It's talking about how operations work and how sales works and how marketing works and IT. It's talking about your use of dashboards. It's literally describing your company in its future state 3 years from now, so that the leadership team has such a clear picture of the vision of the future that they can then figure out the plan to make it come true. It's almost like when the homeowner wants to build a home. If I just said, build me my dream home, here's $5 million, the contractor has no idea what to build. But if I said I want a craftsman style, I want it to be 2 levels, I want it to be, modern, I want it to look like this, here's some drawings of other places, here's some photos of homes that I like. We love to entertain. I want to have a backyard with all my kids. I might even want to have a slide from my second floor down to near where the kitchen is, like you have in your home or had at one point. When you describe your home in such a way, then the architect can do the plans to make that vision come true. Well, it's the same way with building a company. The entrepreneur needs to be more descriptive of what we're building so the employees can figure out the plans to make it come true, and then it allows everyone to be aligned and inspired and working on the right stuff.
Yeah, this actually what you triggered there too. I'll stay on track, but I'll remember the question. How often, so it's 3 years in the future, but what is a healthy amount of time? How many times do you do a vivid vision?
You rewrite it every 3 years. You don't touch it for 3 years. Once you write it, you lock and load it. So I'm just getting ready in October to write my 2028 vivid vision for the COO Alliance, because the one that we're working on right now expires December 31st, 2025. I wrote it 3 years ago. We've been completely locked and loaded on that. The only time you'd ever change it more frequently, the only time you might update it after a year, is if there's a massive global financial crisis or COVID hits, or you decide to completely pivot your business and become a chain of pizza restaurants instead of a recruiting agency. That's when you might completely change your vivid vision. But otherwise, stay locked on it, stay focused on it, and at the end of that 3-year period, you'll write the next one.
When it comes to vivid visions, I know there's a ton of examples. And in fact, I think Blue Grace Logistics, I think I read their vivid vision one time. But any other memorable examples? Because I think people are listening and they're like, oh, that sounds great. But talk about how companies have used a vivid vision to create serious growth.
Well, I've had clients that have taken their 4 or 5 page vivid vision and they've gone to a bank and received funding, where the bank said, I finally understand what you're building. I never understood your business plan. I never understood all your spreadsheets. Now I understand what you're scaling. I've had clients that have landed multi-million-dollar contracts because the customers were so excited to be a part of something that looked like what they were building, that they wanted to be a part of it. I've had customers that have landed high-powered employees that have decided to come and join the company even though it was early stage, because they were excited about what they got to build. Countless examples of how this has made businesses scale better and faster. It also becomes a cultural beacon, like a lightning rod for the media to talk about, for your employees to join you. Everybody is completely aligned and pulling in that same direction. It's exciting. It provides value as well for people to even understand why they're doing their job. There's a story that I tell about, 125 years ago in Barcelona in Spain. There's these 3 guys sitting in the dirt and they're making bricks. And they asked the first guy, what are you doing? He said, I'm making bricks. Asked the second guy, what are you doing? He said, I'm building a wall and I'm making the bricks to build this wall. And they said to the third guy, what are you doing? He said, we're building the Sagrada Familia. It's going to be one of the most incredible cathedrals in the world to worship God, and I get to build the left wall of the cathedral, and I'm making the bricks to build the left wall of the Sagrada Familia. All 3 guys were making bricks, but the one that saw the vivid vision saw greater purpose and excitement and alignment, and it allowed him to stay focused on what his job was. They're still building that church 125 years later. It's still being completed.
Yeah, what a great example. Actually, I was in Barcelona last year, and I, out of my hotel room, I could see it front and center. All right, I'm going to walk through, make this a little bit more exciting, because I know how many different shows you're on, how many different interviews you do. By the way, it's 9 a.m. his time, and it's 4 p.m. my time. He's in Australia, so he's in the 4th inning. I'm
ahead of you. It's tomorrow.
8th inning. Oh, tomorrow, yeah. Okay, so you're in a different game tomorrow than I'm in the game yesterday for you.
Yeah.
So what's the best leadership book you've ever read besides your own?
The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz was really strong about, the wartime CEO. I really, really enjoyed that book. Good to Great from Jim Collins. I've read it a number of times, studied it. Is still a fantastic book on leadership. The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard, still probably the best book on managing and leading people that's ever been written. It's all based on the fundamentals of situational leadership by Dr. Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard. I loved Insanely Simple about Apple and the simplicity systems that were used to scale Apple and to run the business. I think that was a really good one. Those would be some that come top of mind.
Love them. Classics. What's the biggest red flag when interviewing a potential COO?
Ego, and that they know how to do everything because they've already been doing everything. Like it flags to me the inability to be flexible, inability to change, and that they're going to be coming in saying it's my way or the highway versus, let's all collaborate. I want COOs who can come in that can get people debating, get people arguing, get people to consensus, get people sharing ideas, can get people excited and inspired and aligned and working together and collaborating versus I know how to do this because I've always done it that way.
And on that, one thing I wanted to bring up, because I think you're so masterful at explaining this. Explain how the best COOs basically tell CEOs, that's not a great idea. Or they say, no, that's a great idea, but we're not doing that now. Explain that conversation and how they get good at it.
Okay, so when an entrepreneur comes to you with an idea, your job is to say, I love that idea. Let me ask you a few questions so I understand it even more. Which is great. The entrepreneur's like, okay, what are your questions? Well, how is this going to work? Who's going to do this? And you start asking the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the idea. You ask about, is it going to make our people happier, our customers happier? Is it going to make us more profitable? So you understand it all. In that period of maybe even only 5 minutes, you can kind of flesh out that project idea to the point of saying, let's green light, yellow light, or red light the idea. Green light meaning let's start it now. Let's put it right into the project plan. What's it going to bump down the list a little bit? Or yellow light, meaning we love the idea, but we're not going to do it yet. Let's look at it next month or next quarter. Or red light, meaning sounded like a good idea. After we went through the questions together, we both agreed we're killing it. And the entrepreneur feels like it's a really good, safe space because they got it out of their mind into someone who understood it. Instead of saying, no, I don't like that idea, don't shut them down right away. Understand the idea a little bit more. So that's the way I started. I love your idea. Let me ask you some questions.
I love that. When we interview COOs, figuring out how they've managed the CEOs that they've worked for before is so important. And a lot of it has to do with language. So that language pattern is amazing.
The COO's job is to be the brakes to the entrepreneur's gas, but not the parking brake. It's to be the leash to the entrepreneurial dragon, but not choke them, right? It's also to shine the spotlight on them and make them look good, right? We know that most entrepreneurs are a little bit crazy, but let's embrace that crazy. Let's make them iconic.
I love that. I don't know one CEO that would not like a COO that does that for them. What's the best piece of advice you've ever got from a mentor?
Wow, best piece of advice. One is to not play favorites. I didn't recognize how I played favorites inside of the organization. I had people that I hung out with more, went for coffee more, had nicknames with, to kind of give my time a little bit more. Another one was to really grow people. That's probably the best advice, that my job was to grow people, and it was to grow their skills, their confidence, and their connections so that I could delegate everything except genius.
Wow, good advice. What's one daily habit that keeps you most grounded?
I weigh myself every morning. I carry a scale, and I'm a nomad, which means I actually carry a scale in one of my carry-on suitcases that I've been traveling with for 4 years. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me focused that health matters, right? I don't slide into the unhealthy habits that I could.
God, I love that. I don't have a scale at where I'm at, and that's what I do first thing in the morning when I'm at my place in Scottsdale.
Just buy one. I bought a glass scale on Amazon. It's like $24.
I know, I'm going to do that. My wife gives me crap for it because she doesn't like that, but I'm like, that's different. I mean, that's my first measurement of where am I in life? What's my ground zero to start stuff? So
I do it every morning. Shower and shave, and I weigh myself.
Great way to start your day. What's more important in a COO, strategic thinking or ruthless execution?
Yes.
No, you have to answer.
But it's strategy, because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Look, if you've got two COOs and one is executing really, really quickly, and the other one climbs up the tallest tree and says, holy shit, we're in the wrong forest, I think I'd rather have that guy, right? So I'd say strategy, making sure that we're working on the right stuff versus working really hard in the wrong direction.
That makes sense too if you think about the COO kind of being the brakes, but not the parking brake. That they're kind of making sure we're safe and we're not running right off a cliff and killing everybody. So that would make sense. Who's one business leader you think more people should be paying attention to?
I think Dan Martell has blown my mind in the last 3 years. Dan and I have been friends for about 15 years. And we met in a mastermind community called Mastermind Talk. No, actually we met at MetaBridge in 2011. So I've known Dan for 14 years. He was really under the radar until about 2 or 3 years ago. But if you get on his YouTube channel, if you watch him on Instagram, if you read his book, Buy Back Your Time, he really, really understands all aspects of running a business much better than any of the other kind of popular figures on social media are today.
Yeah, I'm a fan as well. Last time I talked to him, I made a comment on like a piece of content, and he humbly said, he goes, "Yeah, we're pretty good at making content now, but they are very good. If you're going to follow somebody, I mean, the content he puts out across the board is great, well produced.
Yeah.
Does a great job." What is the most underrated tool or software for operations teams right now? Or let's just call it for just business in general.
I mean, it's anything with AI, right? It's just absolutely anything with AI. There's actually a dashboard called There Is an AI for That. So there is an AI for that. It shows something like 15,000 different AI tools that exist for about 10,000 different tasks that can be done. So it's just somehow looking to leverage that.
Yeah, I agree. I should probably keep making a list of every week of something that I figured out that AI is helping with.
Well, and teaching your team that, right? Over and over and over. Just a 5-minute book report of, hey, I used AI to do this. Oh, that's fucking cool. I didn't know it could do that. It's those things that happen so frequently.
Yeah, one of the things that it doesn't really blow my mind since, like, now that I've heard it and thought about it, but my son came home from school down at SMU in Dallas, and he told me just like it was like just a matter of fact. He's like, yeah, we get the people that take the best notes in the class, and then the notes and the content from the books and all the stuff that they've kind of dialed in, and then they have it create practice tests, and they study by taking practice tests. I was like, that is the coolest thing I've heard, because everybody thinks that AI is kind of counter to education in some ways, and it might be for some traditional places, but like, I thought that was the coolest thing. That's what they do. They just create from their notes. They dump it all in and be like, create as practice tests. So everybody, I think most people, when they think about AI, they think about how AI is like cheating the system and doing things. But like, you got to think about it different and think about like, what can it do to help me do things more efficiently, more effectively, and buy back time?
Well, and if you don't know what some of those hacks are and some of those tools are, then you're missing that opportunity. And I think it's where the smartest people in the room can learn from some of the youngest people in the room. A 22-year-old second week on the job can probably teach how they've used AI this week that'll blow away a CFO, right? So it's how do we all share, because it's just so new for all of us. We're all getting exposed to it. We just don't know. I learned one about a year ago. Do you know that when you're using your phone, you can actually press on this space bar, and that becomes the mouse pad to move the cursor around? You're always trying to tap your finger to get the cursor to go in the right spot to change a word, change a spelling. If you press on the space bar and hold the space bar, it's a cursor, it's a mouse pad. I'm like, that's a freaking cool tool.
I have done that, but that is badass. That is like, because now that I can't see very well too, sometimes you can't see where the cursor's at. That is a
that was me. That was me learning from a 20-year-old, right? So I think that's where it's not the best tool. I think automations and leveraging technology is happening so quickly. It's just sharing those with each other is the tool.
Yeah, I agree. What's something people misunderstand about you?
That I'm not as serious as they think I am. I'm just in my head. That I'm not arrogant. I'm just in my head. I'm more insecure. I'm often shy. I'll often sit. I remember, you and I met 15 years ago, and I was at your wedding about 10 years ago, and I remember sitting at the pool with all of your friends around, and I'm sure some of them might have thought that I was arrogant or standoffish. I was nervous, man. I didn't know how to go meet everybody. They all seemed like really cool people that all knew each other, and I kind of sat by myself a lot, and I needed somebody to pull me into the group so that I could get to know everybody. And I think the opposite is people think that I'm this standoffish, arrogant, whatever, where the opposite is very true.
Man, I think that's true for a lot of people. I think people they think because you can speak in front of a lot of people, and by the way, I've seen him speak one to many, many times very well, but he had to learn that, you know what I mean? That didn't come natural for you. In fact, you claim to be more of an introvert, right, than an extrovert?
Yeah, speaking on stages has actually been very easy for me because I started doing it in grade 2. But connecting with people was very hard for me because every year I went to a new school. So I kept going to a different school, so I never really knew how to fit in, because by the time I got to meet everybody, I was packing up and going to the next school. I think that was my starting point for some of that.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
hard.
What's one thing you wish every founder would stop doing?
One thing I wish founders would stop doing, I think it would be the going from idea to wanting people to start stuff so quickly. It's the idea to execution that it's so random and it pulls people off task. It pulls people off their focus. It pulls people off their game. I wish they would slow down and be a little bit more intentional with starting all these great ideas. Get all the great ideas, write them down, but don't start them all right away.
Man, I think I'm guilty of that. Let me write that down real quick so I don't forget. All right, and if you weren't doing this, so this being like running the COO Alliance and, speaking and building, writing books and training, if you had to take everything away that you're doing, what would you do?
I would be doing this. This is what I'm meant to be doing. If like for fun, what I would be doing is hiking and traveling and spending time with my wife and kids. But in the business world, I would probably find my way right back to this. I just know that this is my core purpose, is to help entrepreneurs make their vivid visions come true. So everything I do is my Second in Command podcast helps them, my 6 books helps them, my Invest in Your Leaders training helps them, my group coaching, one-on-one coaching, my COO Alliance, everything is helping them. I think I'd end up finding my way back here because I just know that's my core purpose.
And I love that. That is awesome to know. Well, any last words? So as we're starting to, I know I got you, it's early in the day for you, but I want to be respectful of your time. Anything, like we talked about a lot, this was awesome, by the way. We kind of decided to do this somewhat last minute. This is just basically me throwing questions at him. This guy's that good at answering them and creating such a good conversation. But anything that you are thinking about or any last words that you have as we're wrapping up?
I think it's that, well, and I even had a tattoo on my arm that shows this. It's the Ram Dass quote of walking each other home, that none of this shit matters. This is just what we're doing to make money, that at the end of the day, we are just walking each other home. That, enjoy the journey, have fun along the journey, spend time with your wife and your kids and your hobbies and your passions, because at the end of the day, the death rate is still 100%.
Man, wise words. That's a mic dropper. You've been listening to the Built on Purpose podcast, brought to you by Yscouts. You can listen to all of our past and future podcasts at yscouts.com. Cameron, thanks for being a guest today.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Max. Good to see you again.
You too.